Welcome to the session today. Hope you all can hear me. Can you guys confirm once?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So let us start the session. If you guys remember, yesterday I have told you about the data proc. Okay, so what is data proc and how data proc came into the picture and what is Hadoop, what is Spark, what is MapReduce. I have given you a good understanding of all of these things. Today, let us try to create a cluster in the data proc and see how we can create a cluster and how to run the PySpark jobs in the data proc cluster. So let us try to see that today. Okay, so let me gonna share my screen, guys. Hope you all can see my screen. So let me gonna change the project. I'll go to the data proc. So I'm gonna click on the data proc. So when you wanted to create a cluster in the data proc, this is how the interface looks like. If you wanted to work with the data proc, we need to enable the data proc API. So we just have to click on the enable, that's it. The API will be enabled. Once the API is enabled, we can able to create a cluster in the data proc. Okay, we already know a cluster is nothing but a collection of machines. These collection of machines can be, whenever you wanted to create a cluster, we already know that a cluster is nothing but a collection of machines. Those collection of machines can be created on top of the compute engine or on a Google Kubernetes engine. A compute engine is nothing but a virtual machines, a cluster of virtual machines, a cluster of containers. Okay, so as per your requirement, you can select any of these things. Most of the time, people will go with the compute engine only. So that is the reason I'm going to click on create compute engine. Okay, so this is how we will be having total 4 steps are there. The very first step is that we need to provide the cluster name. Okay, what we need to do, sir? We need to provide the cluster name. So the very cluster name you can give demo cluster. Okay, the cluster name you can give as demo cluster. And after that, we need to select the location properly. So location, and that is nothing but a region and zone. We have to select it properly. So region I'm selecting as US Central 1 and zone I'm selecting as US Central 1B. Okay. So this is how I'm selecting the region. So you can select the region and zone so that this cluster actually gets created in this particular region that you are specifying. And after that, cluster type we have to mention. So as I told you, a cluster is a collection of machines. There are actually 3 types of clusters. Okay. When I say cluster, it is a collection of machines. There are 3 types of clusters, guys. One is single node cluster. Second one is multi-node cluster. Third one is, I think, high availability cluster. High availability cluster, yes. So these are the 3 clusters are there. 3 types of clusters are there. Single node cluster. In a single node cluster, you will only be having only one node. Can anyone tell me what is mean by a node? What is mean by node, sir? Anyone?
It's a machine.
Yes, perfect. A node is nothing but a machine, sir. A single node machine, a single node cluster means only one single node, only one machine will be there, nothing but a one node will be there. That node is also master node. Okay, that node is also master node. Okay, so this is how in a single node we will only be having one node, and that node is nothing but a master node or driver node you can think of. Okay, and in a multi-node you will be having multiple machines, multiple nodes, nothing but a multiple machines you will be having, and you will be having here master node and n number of worker nodes, n number of worker nodes. N is nothing but anything, guys. So n is equal to minimum is equal to 2. N can be 3, 4, 5. So according to your job requirement, sir, I need this many number of machines. You can specify n is equal to 2, or n is equal to 3, or n is equal to 4. So multi-node cluster. In a multi-node cluster, you will be having one master node. You will be having one master node, n number of worker nodes. Okay, n number of worker nodes. Similarly, in a high availability cluster, total here 3 master nodes will be there. High availability means that cluster has to be highly available all the time. And one more thing is that the resources has to be available all the time. So that is the reason this is a highly available cluster. This means the resources are a lot of resources with the high availability. So here we will be having 3 master nodes and n number of worker nodes. Okay, n number of worker nodes. So this is what is a differences in the clusters, guys. So there are 3 types of clusters will be there. One is single node cluster, multi node cluster, and high availability cluster. Hope this is clear. Okay, anyone have any questions on this one, guys?
This one fall into anything scalability, like a vertical, horizontal, anything?
No, actually it's your wish. So you are specifying here this many number of nodes I want. So what happens is that, for example, you specify 1 and 8. Okay, that means sir, in a multi-node cluster, I have specified one master node, 8 worker nodes. So what happens is that if your job is very small, it will only be using the one master node, one worker node only in the backend. Okay, because it doesn't use all the resources. But whenever there is a resource requirement is there, it will go up to one master node, 8 number of worker nodes. That is what you mentioned, n is equal to 8. So that is what is auto scaling. Okay, as per your requirement, automatically it is scaling up to 8, maximum 8, but you have specified 8 only, so that is the reason it go up to 8. No, as per the requirement it has to be even auto scalable. In that case you can go for serverless. Okay, so yeah, here it is. Dataproc serverless option is also there. Okay, in that case, you don't need to specify this type of a cluster size and all of those things. Automatically, it creates the resources according to the job requirement. Okay, so that is all. Okay, you can also enable the auto scaling, but in our trial period, auto scaling is not available for us. Okay, in a trial period it is not available, but when you go for a premium account you will be having auto scaling features also. Okay, so this is how there are 3 types of clusters. One is this one, sorry. Okay, so now let us go into, sorry, let us try to create the cluster. Now, sir, I wanted to create a multi-node cluster is also called as a standard cluster, because most of the time people are using this cluster only. Multi-node cluster is also called as a standard cluster. So here it is standard cluster. So here you will be having one master and number of workers. So let us specify later what is n. Okay, now I have selected the cluster type as standard, and which operating system you wanted to go for, which is the image version of it, you can able to see it here. It is 2.2 Debian. If you wanted to change it, you can able to select according to your requirement. Okay, sir, I want a Debian 2.12. This is a latest version, sir. Okay, this is the latest image with the Hadoop 3.3, Spark 3.5. If you wanted to go for beyond that also, you can able to select a different Spark versions and Hadoop versions and select those operating systems. Okay, so these are the images respective to the Hadoop version and Spark versions. Now I have selected Debian 2.12, which comes up with the Spark 3.5, Hadoop 3.3. And sir, I wanted to enable few optimizations on top of my cluster. So here you have the few performance enhancement techniques are already there. If you wanted to enable it, you can enable. So this gives you very good performance optimization system. So this is how you can able to enable these things. So this is something that you can actually enable during the code also whenever you are submitting a job, or whenever you are creating the cluster, all the jobs will be it will be applicable when you enable it here. Okay, so that is how. And the network configuration, by default I'm selecting the default network. If you wanted to select a different network in your company, you can select it. Metastore, Dataproc has its own Metastore on top of Hive Metastore. It will be created on top of the Hive only. So if you wanted to create a new service for the Metastore, you can create it. Okay, now I am not going to create anything, so let me go back. Okay, demo cluster, standard. So I'm enabling these things. And after that, network configurations, Metastores. So this is component gateway. Sir, I have Spark UI, and I have Hadoop, and I am having also Hive. Sir, I wanted to enable the component gateway. So whenever it is required, I wanted to look at the UI details, Spark UI, for example. So most of the times we wanted to see the Spark UI so that we can able to see the parallelism, we can able to see the cluster data distribution, all of those things. So if you wanted to enable the component gateway, you can enable it so that all the component gateways will be enabled. So if you wanted to additionally install any kind of a components also, you can able to install. So for example, I want the Flink, I want the Soiler, I want the Docker, any of these things. If you wanted to install, you can install it, guys. So for now, I'm selecting this Jupyter notebook. If you want Rhino or if you want Flink, anything, you can able to use it also. Okay, so this is how you have to provide the details. Once you have provided the details, click on this configure nodes, and this is where we have to provide the information related to the master node as well as worker node. Master node is also called as a driver node, also called it as a manager node. Okay, let me clear that out for you guys. Okay, some people have this kind of a doubt. So what is master node, sir? A master node is also called as a driver node. Okay, we can also call it as a driver node, sir. A master node, a driver node. Master node is also called as a driver node. Also called as a manager node. Also called as a data node, or I forgot that there is one more name is also there, sir. Data node, as well as forgot that. Okay, master node or worker node, driver
Maybe
node or slave node. Sorry.
yeah, slave node I'm going to tell you.
No, slave node, yeah. Manager node, master node, worker node, driver node, slave node, manager node. Again, they call it as a worker node only, and I also call it as a data node. Okay, so these are the names that people usually call it as. You can actually remember these names, guys. You shouldn't confuse at all. Master node, driver node, manager node, all are same thing. Or worker node, slave node, or a data node. All of these things are same. Okay. Now let me go back here. So when they were mentioned the manager node, that means it is name node. Actually, I forgot that. It is a name node. There is a one more name also. Name node, data node. Yeah. Okay, so here we have a manager node. We have to provide the configuration for that. What is the machine type? What is the machine series? What is the disk size? Number of CPUs, memory? All of these details we have to design it here. So I will go for N1 standard 1, N1 standard 2 I am going for. 2 CPUs will be there, 7.5 GB will be there. And disk size also you can change it if you want. If you want 50 only, you can select the 50. So select the series, machine type, and the disk size, CPU, memory, all of these things. Similarly, we have a worker nodes. We have a worker nodes. You can select the again the series N1 standard 2 and machine type N1 standard 2, CPU, memory, and the number of workers. How many number of workers you need? Sir, I want a number of workers are 2 or 3 or 4. You can mention it here. You can mention even 100 also. Okay, 100 number of worker nodes also you can have it. So for now I am going with a minimum 2. You cannot go for 1, sir. You cannot go for 1. Minimum is 2. Okay, so this is how you can specify, and primary disk size I am going with 50 only. Okay, so this is how master node as well as worker node details we are going to provide it properly. Okay, once we have provided it, if you wanted to set few more settings like cluster customizing it, if you wanted to add any kind of a cluster properties, initialization actions, metadata properties, schedule deletion, cloud storage bucket, and manage security. So if you wanted to add any of these things, you can able to add security details like personal cluster authentication and any of the security details if you wanted to add. By default, the customer Google encryption is also there. So all of these things are already enabled. So if you wanted to go into some details, you can able to enable it. So initialization action is something that whenever your cluster is created, if you wanted to install any kind of a connectors or any kind of a packages, you can go for initialization actions. Cluster metadata, if you have some custom metadata to your cluster instances, you can actually add it here. So this is how you can able to provide all of these details. Okay, so this is how you can able to provide all of these details, guys. If you click on create, the cluster gets created. Okay, if you just click on create, the cluster gets created. So this is how you can able to create a data pro cluster. And so if you wanted to say, sir, I don't wanted to create a cluster from this type. If you wanted to create a cluster, you have to manually provide all of the details all the time. So if you wanted to create a cluster using the command line tool also, you can able to copy this command. From the command line tool, you can also run this. Whenever you wanted to run a command to create the clusters, you can just copy this command and run it in your Cloud Shell so that the cluster command line interface will be automatically connected. Okay, so this is how it is, guys. Okay, so even I have the same type of something. So if I go to my data proc, so I have here the same thing. For creating a single node, I have just done the same thing. I just copied it and pasted here. You can also see here gcloud data proc clusters, create cluster name, and all of these things. If you wanted to create a single node cluster or multi-node cluster, so I have here the code. So what I will do, I'll copy this code. I will show you. I already told you how to create this one, right? So when you click on create, this one will be created. Similarly, if you wanted to create a cluster from the cloud, activate cloud shell, you can also do it. So I have not created from the console. I'm going to create it from the cloud shell. Okay, let us try to create it from the cloud shell so that you will also know how to create it. So let me gonna put all the properties here and let me try to tell you. Okay, so cluster name, if you and the region both are the variables here. If you wanted to give you a cluster name, you can give demo cluster. So I'm giving as a demo cluster. The cluster name I'm giving as a demo cluster. Okay. So look at here. So cluster name I'm giving as a demo cluster. The region I am selecting as a US Central, US East one. If you wanted to select the US Central one also, that is totally fine. And here gcloud data pro clusters, create cluster name, the region, the number of workers, the master worker machine type, worker disk size, master machine type, master disk size. Image version, you can go for 2.2. You can go for 2.2. 1 minute, guys. Let me go and see whether the 2.2 is the recent one. I think the 2.2 is the recent one. Yes, 2.2 Debian 12. So I will come here and I will mention 2.2 Debian 12. Okay, so enabling the component gateways. If you wanted to have a optional components, you can add it here. If you have any kind of a initialization actions, also you can add it here. And the metadata, if you have any other metadata, also you can add it here. So these are extra things that I have added here, guys. Without this, also the cluster gets created. It's only for you to understand that you can also add initialization actions in the command line interface. You can also add connectors also, and metadata connectors also you can able to add it in the Cloud Shell. Okay, copy this entire thing, go into your Cloud Shell, go to your Cloud Shell and paste it here. So once you paste it, click on enter so that the cluster gets created. Authorize it. Okay. Okay, something is wrong. 1 minute, guys. Okay, I may have to. There is something wrong, guys. So related to the network details. 1 minute. Let me go to the subnet. They are saying that something wrong with the subnet details. Number is the default network. Let me go and try to do that. So VPC default subnet. Subnet default does not support the private access, which is required for data pro clusters when internal IP is set to true. Enable internal IP set to true. I don't know this one. This is the first time I'm also seeing. Okay, so or else we can also set internal IP is equal to false. Let us try to do that, guys. So let us try to put internal IP is equal to false in our code so that it will work, I believe. So I'll try to put it here. Internal IP only is equal to true. I will try to mention is equal to true or false. Okay, so this is how it is. I'm going to setting it as a internal IP only is equal to false. So let me try to create a cluster one more time. It's the same thing. So that's not available. Okay, okay. So let us try to create a cluster. So seems like something wrong. Maybe I can go here. Default subnet. There are already default subnet is there. Okay, for US, which one we are using, sir? US East one. US East one region. US East one. Okay, you have only one. So let me select this thing. 1 minute, guys. Okay, so somewhere here. Okay, edit internal private Google access. I'm going to turn it on, so that is what it means, right? Okay, it is true. Enable the private access, yeah, private Google access. Yes. So let me enable it off and click on save. Okay, let me click on save. So something like this, some network issue it is facing while creating the cluster. So I'm trying to fix it out, guys. Give me 1 minute. So it gets saved. So when it is gets saved, it is private Google Access is turned on. So now let us try it out. Okay, click on enter. The same code. Okay, perfect. It's getting created, guys. The cluster is getting created. You can go here and refresh it. The cluster started creating, demo cluster is started creating. Okay, so this is how, if you wanted to create a cluster, guys, either you can create it from the console or you can create it from the cloud shell. Both of the ways you can able to do it. So for cloud shell, for single node or multi node, I have here the code. You can actually use the same thing. Okay, yeah. And before that, we faced some issue, right? So what we have done, we went to the subnet details and we have enabled this particular thing. Even this is the first time I'm seeing this. Earlier it was not there, that error was not throwing. This is the first time we have seen, and I'm able to fix it. Okay, so this is how we can create the cluster. Okay, this is how we can create the cluster. It takes like 3 to 4 minutes. And meanwhile, if you guys have any questions, you can ask me. Meanwhile, if you guys have any questions, you can ask me, guys.
Cluster meaning creating cluster we can able to create through Kubernetes and through Docker also, right?
You can create any, I mean, creating a cluster with which cluster you mean to say?
Generally, whichever we are creating now with
See, the cluster, there are different types of a cluster is there. This is a data pro cluster, which is mainly used for the data processing. Okay, it comes up with the Spark environment. The cluster is a collection of machines. Those collection of machines can be any collection of machines, right? Here it is a Spark collection of machines, so that these machines are already configured with the Spark, so that can be used for the data processing or a big data pipeline creations. Okay, what you are saying is a Kubernetes cluster, so that is a collection of containers. So there you are going to use it for your application deployment and all of those things. Can be used for anything. Kubernetes cluster can be used for anything. Okay. The main purpose of the data pro cluster is for only for the Spark and Hadoop environment only. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions, anyone?
in Kubernetes cluster we cannot able to deploy this one.
I did not know. See here, if you wanted to create a cluster, you can create a cluster on top of a GKE, nothing but a Google Kubernetes engine only. Okay, you can deploy it on GKE. Okay. Any other questions? So let me gonna tell you a small simple job how you usually create a Spark. Once we create a cluster, how do we create a Spark job, and how do we submit that job to the Dataproc cluster, and how the job will be running in the Dataproc cluster. Let us try to see today. Okay, so that is what we are going to see today. So for now, what I will try to do is that let me once the this cluster is provisioned, we will try to see it. Okay. It is getting provisioned still. So let it create, guys. If anyone have any questions, meanwhile, you can ask me.
Do you have any steps to create through Google Kubernetes Engine cluster?
You
So
have it here. You can just click on create a cluster on top of the Google Kubernetes. You can just
it's
click
the
on
same
create.
steps or it will come different?
It's the same.
Okay.
Yeah. You can just click on create. That's it. Automatically, it creates a Kubernetes cluster. You just have to provide the same. Okay. So you can just see how you wanted to see. Configure the nodes. If you in a Kubernetes, if you wanted to add a node pool, you click on add node pool, and what is the configuration of the node pool. If you have an existing node pool, you can also reuse that existing node pool. Okay, so that is how it is. If you wanted to add any number of node pools, you can able to add it. Okay. So node is nothing but again a collection of machines. In the node pool is again it will be what happens when you are actually using the GKEs, right? So in the backend it will be creating a VMs only again. So that is how it is. But maintaining the containers are very easy and it is what we call as a lightweight compared to the VMs. So that's the reason people may use the Kubernetes clusters. It's taking a lot of time. Let's see why. No, everything seems good. So let's wait, sir, one more minute. Yes, the cluster is created and it is in a running state. You guys can see it, right? So this is how if you wanted to create a cluster, and this is how either you can create a cluster from the cloud console, or you can also create a cluster from the cloud shell as well. And if you wanted to create a cluster, you can create a cluster on any type of these things. Either you can create it on a compute engine, nothing but a virtual machines, or Google Kubernetes engines, nothing but a containers. Okay. And once the cluster is created, you can click on the cluster. Okay. You can click on the cluster. Here it will be having all the monitoring dashboards if you wanted to see the capacity, memory, all of those details. And we have not submitted any job. So you can see here the jobs are 0. And as I told you, we have created this on a compute engine, nothing but a virtual machine. So you'll be able to see it has created 3 virtual machines because this cluster of size 3 only. So when you mention one master node, 2 worker nodes, nothing but a total 3 machines will be there. So you have it here, the 3 machines. And you have here the configuration. Whenever you wanted to change the configuration again, you can come here to the edit option. You can able to edit this configuration again. And we have enabled the component gateways. If you don't enable the component gateways, you will not be able to see all of these options. Okay, these component gateways are very useful whenever you wanted to optimize your cluster mode, or whenever you wanted to understand the cluster mode details. So in that case, you can enable these component gateways. And one more thing, sir, I wanted to create a PySpark job and run the PySpark job. If you wanted to do that, you can actually go to this Jupyter Lab, click on this Jupyter Lab. So what we have done, sir, we have created, we are clicking on the Jupyter Lab. So once you click on the Jupyter Lab, and Jupyter Lab will be opened in the next tab. Okay, so this is how it is. So if you wanted to create a PySpark job or a Scala job or a R job or anything, Python jobs, you can able to create anything, guys, here. So most of the times we are going to create a PySpark job only. So I'm going to click on this PySpark job. Okay, if you wanted to, I'm going to increase the size for you guys so that it usually we can increase. Okay, so this is how the interface looks like. Sir, now what we are going to do, a simple job, let us try to do it. And the simple job is that, sir, I have a data in the Google Cloud Storage. I wanted to move the data to the BigQuery and wanted to do few transformations. Okay, I have the data in the GCS. wanted to move it to the BigQuery, and while moving it, I wanted to perform few transformations. So this is my pipeline. So my typical pipeline, I have a source here, I have a destination here. I wanted to do the transformation. So extract the data from the GCS, transform the data here, load the data to the BigQuery. So let us try to create how we can able to create this pipeline using the PySpark job. And this is a demo only. So this way you can able to understand how you can able to create a pipeline. Okay, for that, assume that I need to have a Google Cloud Storage, any of the files. So let me open the Google Cloud Storage here. And let me go to the cloud storage. And I may be having few of the files, right? So yeah, I have here few of the files. Let me take this employee.txt. Okay. Sir, I wanted to read the data from this employee.txt, which is there in the Google Cloud Storage bucket. And I wanted to read the data and transform the data and load the data to the BigQuery. So that is what I wanted to do. Very first thing is that you try to make sure that PySpark is installed or not. So all of these notebooks are installed with PySpark only. You can also see here the kernel is PySpark only selected properly. And once the PySpark is enabled, we can able to create a first thing is that whenever you wanted to create any job, 1 minute, sir. So we wanted to create a Spark session. So if you wanted to install PySpark, you can use this command, but I'm not going to run it because PySpark is already installed. For you to understand, if you wanted to install PySpark, you can use this command, install PySpark command. Let me increase the size a bit more. Increase the UI size. Increase the UI size. Okay, so this is if you wanted to install the PySpark, you can use this command, guys. So to install the PySpark, so this is a command pip install PySpark. So when you run it, the PySpark will be installed. So if you run it, what happens is that this requirement is already satisfied. So that is the reason it does not install it, because we are actually opening the PySpark notebook only. Right, when you opening the PySpark notebook only, the PySpark is already pre-installed on top of this notebook. So this is the advantage with the clusters, guys. So this is the advantage with the fully managed service. So when you are actually using the fully managed service, you don't need to specifically install anything. Automatically it is getting installed, and automatically it is already available for your own development purpose. You can start using it. Okay, so that is the reason the PySpark is already installed on top of this notebook. And one more thing, we can also create a Spark session, guys. A Spark session is an entry point to your application. In PySpark jobs, if you wanted to create it, we have to create a Spark session, and Spark session is an entry point to your application. So if whenever you are creating a job or whenever you are creating anything, when you are creating an entry point, all the resources will be created for your job, and whatever the resources it is created, in that resources only your job is going to be running. So that is the reason to create a Spark session, which is an entry point to your application. So this is a command. First, we import the PySpark. From PySpark.sql, we are going to import the Spark session. Spark is equal to Spark session.builder, master local, application name, configuration. If you wanted to this configuration, I'm going to remove it. If you wanted to add configuration, you can add it. So this is how you can able to create a Spark session, sir. If you run this cell, if you wanted to run this cell, you can use shift plus enter, or you can click on this play button also. You can click on the play button also, or you can run shift plus enter. So when you click on shift plus enter, you can see here the Spark session is created. Okay, so this is how the Spark session was created, but this step is also not mandatory. So these both of the steps are not mandatory, guys, because these both of these steps are already created on top of this notebook, because this is a PySpark notebook. The installation of the PySpark, the session of the PySpark is already created. We don't need to specifically create it. We don't need to specifically install it also. So that is the reason here also it is showing using the existing Spark session only. Okay, so that is all. To make you understand that if you wanted to install PySpark on any other machine also, this is a command. to install to create the Spark session on any of the environment, you can use this command. So this is to make you aware only. Now, sir, we wanted to read the data from this. Read data from, this is our source step. We wanted to read the data from GSS bucket, and which is a CSV file. We already know, right? Which is a CSV file. So let me gonna mention CSV source path. CSV source path is equal to, so this is the path of my file, guys, right? So if you wanted, as I told you, in Google Cloud Storage, we are not only just storing the data, we are also retrieving the data. So now I wanted to retrieve this data for my data processing purpose. So I'm going to copy this path. I'm going to paste it here. So this is my path. So this path is having the data. Okay. Now I wanted to create a data frame. In PySpark, most of the times we are going to create a data frame. A data frame is nothing but a similar to a table where it will be having a schema and where it will be having its own table structure, and it is created on top of the fundamental concept called RDDs. And it also have its own optimization techniques compared to the RDD. So there is an RDD. There are three types of API in the Spark. One is RDD, one is data frame, one is dataset. So all of these things are nothing but a way to store the data. An API is to store the data. RDD is a fundamental data structure. Data frame is an addition. In addition to the RDD's properties, it also gets some kind of optimizations. You can also have the schema. In RDD, you do not have a proper table schema, but here you can have a table schema. So whenever you wanted to work with the structured data, we are going to create the data frame. Most of the times we are going to work with the data frame only. Create a data frame from source file. So I'm going to create a data frame, sir. So I have here the source file. So I wanted to read the data from that source file, and I wanted to create a data frame. I'm going to run this one. So it is also run successfully. Now I wanted to create a data frame. Data frame 1 is equal to. So whenever you wanted to read the data from a CSV, you can use spark dot read dot. You have a plenty of options here. CSV format. When I click on tab, all of these things opens. Let me click on code size. Hope you guys can see it. So spark dot read dot, when you click on tab, you will be able to see CSV or JSON or load options, or whenever you wanted to mention anything, Parquet or Avro or ORC or text file, you can able to mention. Our agenda is that reading the data from the CSV. So I'm going to select the CSV. And inside that, we have to provide the CSV path. So the path of the file. So I'm going to provide this path. And in the data frame, if you wanted to show the data, you can show df1.show. Okay, so if you wanted to print the schema, you can print the schema. So in advanced class, you will be having a PySpark session actually. So where you are going to read, where you are going to understand what is PySpark and how to create the PySpark jobs from each and every step. Something wrong. Oh, actually, sorry guys, this is not our book. This is a different project. Let me select a different project. Employee.txt. Copy this file. Okay, it's the same thing, right? What is the problem? 1 minute, guys. Something wrong here. This is landing bucket. In the landing bucket, we have this employee.txt. Copy this path. And we have not provided the proper path, guys. We have provided a wrong project. So that's the reason. Now it is a correct path. Provided the path here and run this one so that something wrong here today. Okay. Okay, seems like something is wrong here, guys. I forgot that. Some error I'm getting BigQuery relation provided could not be instantiated. Data source register provided. It's a Py4J error. Not sure why we're getting this one. So I have mentioned the connector also. Seems like whatever the connector details I might have provided, so I might have changed it wrongly. Okay, so R, oh, okay, I forgot that, guys. So earlier it was 2.2, and this connector details were for 2.2 only. I might have changed it to the 2.5. So that could be a reason. So what I will do, okay, let me give me 1 minute, guys. So let us try to create a cluster with this one. Okay, let us do this action tomorrow. Okay, so what we will do, let us try to create this PySpark job, and let us try to see how we can able to create a PySpark job and how to run this PySpark job. And I am not saving it now. So tomorrow what we will do, we will try to create this PySpark job, and we will also see how we can able to submit it to the Dataproc cluster. And after that, we will also see what is data flow also. Okay. Yeah. Any questions?
This PySpark job, is it possible to create through GKE? Can you show that tomorrow?
That's what I'm telling you. It's a cluster, guys. GK is just a cluster. That's what I'm telling you. If you wanted to create just a cluster, for example, you can go here. If you wanted to create it, I'm telling you, just come here, just click on create cluster, provide the name, provide the region, and just you don't need to mention this cloud storage bucket. Come here, just add a node pool and mention the node pool name, the role, whether it is a controller or a driver, you can mention it and mention these details, and again add a node pool for the workers also, add a role as worker or executor. So once you mention it, you can able to create it. I can show you, it's the same thing. You can come here, just add a pool name, you select it for first thing, it is a controller or a spark driver, you can mention it, or you wanted to use it for both, you enable all of these things, click on OK. So that is how. And select the location is something that where you wanted to create it, just provide the name. Okay, so it will come here. Do you wanted to use the preemptible? No, I don't wanted to use the preemptibility. Maximum how many machines you want? Sir, I want 5 machines. Click done. So the location, it should be coming, it is not displaying the location. Should automatically it should come. It's taking some time for the cluster. It will come, guys, after some time it will come for sure. And similarly, you can also add one more. If you wanted to use, if you wanted to have any number of node pools, you can able to add any number of node pools. Click on it. This location, do we have selected the location here? Yes. This is fine. And one more thing also you can do, if you don't wanted to create a Kubernetes cluster here, sir, I wanted to create a Kubernetes cluster in the GKE. Okay, you can go to the GKE directly, you can create a cluster there, Google Kubernetes engine. You can create the cluster here and make use of it. You can also make use of that particular cluster which is already created. So that is also fine. Okay, enable the API. Okay, you can create the cluster here. This cluster, why I'm not creating it is that it actually takes at least 15 to 20 minutes for the GK cluster to create. 15 to 20 minutes. So that is the reason I usually don't use it. Okay, so if you wanted to create it, get started, click on create cluster here. You have a create cluster here, and just provide the create cluster. I don't want it to use autopilot. I wanted to switch it to the standard cluster. So just create a cluster with all the properties, and once create the cluster, you can just come here and browse it and select the cluster, and so that you don't need to provide any cluster configuration details. Automatically, it will be using the existing GKE cluster. So that is also fine. You can create it. It takes around 15 minutes, guys, for the cluster to create it. Whatever the cluster configuration you are providing, right? It takes at least 15 minutes. And once the 15 minutes is done, you can come here and you can browse it. The cluster will be appeared here. You can click on that GKE cluster. Okay, so that is how. Then once you selected it, automatically you don't need to provide these details. You can just click on create. So that is one way. Or else, I wanted to provide the GKE details. You can also provide the GK details. I don't know why it is not coming. This location should come. Where we are actually using the page does not have a content custom. Okay. Okay, 1 minute. So 1 minute. When you go here, okay, that's fine. And you mentioned some name, you mentioned some controller, and you mentioned the location. I don't know why the location is not coming. Okay, check it out, guys. The location should come. So that is how once you create the cluster, it's same. Whether working with the GKE or working with the GIE or working with the GCE, all these things are same only. Compute engine or Kubernetes engine, both are same. The only thing is that the resources are different. The infrastructure is different. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions?
But in real-time projects, we will use Google Kubernetes only, right? Generally,
No,
best
you can.
practice.
No, not like that. They will be using the compute engine. Most of the times, compute engine only used. Google compute engines. The one which I have created the cluster, right? So this is commonly used. Okay, yeah. Okay, okay, guys. So once you create a cluster, try to stop it. Otherwise, it's gonna be incurring an extra charges if it is running. Try to stop it, and whenever you wanted to work with the cluster, enable it so that you can able to work with this cluster. Okay. Yep. Okay, guys, this is it for today, and we will see tomorrow. Few more things. Thank you all. Have a great day. Bye bye. We'll meet tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
पंखे का रियर गार्ड है, इसे हम लेंगे। आप ध्यान से देखिए 3 पिन दिए हुए हैं मोटर पर। 1, 2 और 3 3 पिन दिए हुए हैं। आप
टच पैनल भी दे रखा है, इसके द्वारा भी ये चलेगा। इसमें ऑप्शन है मिस्ट मोड, चेंज कर सकते हैं, टाइमर लगा सकते हैं ऑफ ऑन का, और स्पीड बढ़ाने घटाने का और स्विंग करने का। ठीक है, ये फैन है, ये मैं फैन को ऑन करके आपको दिखा रहा हूँ। ये रहा। ये जैसे मैं इसका मिस्ट ऑन करता हूँ, ये मिस्ट एयर है, और ये देखते होंगे कि पानी की एक साथ विदाउट ड्रॉपलेट्स है। इस पर आप हाथ भी रखोगे तो ये हाथ में नमी नहीं बनती है। ठीक है, और ये कमरे को अप टू 5 डिग्री टेम्परेचर तक कम कर देती है। ठीक है, और इसके साथ में ये हमारा एक्चुअल मिस्ट ऑन है। इसके साथ में मैं फैन अपना स्टार्ट कर रहा हूँ। ये देख रहे होंगे कि बहुत अच्छे से ये फव्वारे के साथ में ये पूरे कमरे को सर्कुलेट करके ये कमरे के टेम्परेचर को कम करेगा अप टू 5 डिग्री सेल्सियस तक। ये फैन लेने की सबसे मेन बेनिफिट ये है कि कूलर को एज ए रिप्लेस कर रहा है। एक एग्जांपल के व्यू से अगर कहें तो, मतलब प्योर नहीं, लेकिन अगर हम लेते हैं इसकी जगह पे, तो कूलर हमारे लिए बहुत ज्यादा स्पेस कवर करता है, बट ये हमारा ज्यादा स्पेस कवर नहीं करता है। और ये हमें बार बार पानी डालने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है। एक बार हम 1 टाइम 3 लीटर का पानी हम डालें और ये 8 घंटे तक ये वर्किंग में रहेगा बिल्कुल प्रॉपर। और ये यहाँ से बहुत ठंडी हवा आ रही है, जैसे मैं महसूस कर पा रहा हूँ अपने हाथों के द्वारा। और इसमें सारे टाइमिंग है, और इसकी एयर डिलीवरी बहुत ज्यादा है। एयर डिलीवरी की बात करूँ तो 80 सीएमएम की एयर डिलीवरी है, और स्वीप मोड इसकी 400 है। और पावर कंजम्पशन की बात करूँ तो ये 75 वाट का पावर कंजम्पशन है। और आरपीएम, ये जो आरपीएम है इसकी, ये 1200 एमएम की है। ठीक है, और इसमें 3 प्लेट्स लगे हुए हैं। और इसकी नॉइस की बात करूँ तो बहुत लो नॉइस है, और ग्रेट कूलिंग ये करता है कमरे की, और हायर एयर डिलीवरी है। ठीक है, और 100% कॉपर इंडक्शन मोटर है, और मोटर की 5 साल की वारंटी है, और कंप्रिहेंसिव वारंटी 2 ईयर की है।